Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. Just before I begin my speech, if I could just say at the outset that there's nothing that I'm going to say tonight that should be taken as seeking to undermine or take away from the seriousness of violent sex crimes. Obviously it is very, very difficult for me to come in at the end here. I hate being last speaker, and obviously I feel that the odds are mounted against me before I start talking about the accused reputations. But I should also just say that I've spent a great deal of my career acting for victims of child abuse. I have represented the CEO of the National Board for the Safeguarding of Children in the Catholic Church, who has come under a lot of pressure. So I've been on the front line, in both sides of the coin here, but I still very much oppose the motion that's on the table tonight. I have spent most of my 35-year career as a lawyer in the area of media law, and I'm often thrown into the front line of battle with the tabloid press whenever I've been trying to protect a reputation that's been devastated. Up to about 10 years ago, my battle was fairly simple. It was with the print media and the broadcasters. But in recent times, that battlefield has extended to the internet, the online battle. And with respect to all the speakers tonight, as somebody who's having to face this on a daily basis, the whole area has changed. The law has failed to keep up, whether it's a defamation law, whether it's a law protecting victims or the accused. The internet has changed the rules, the goalposts, everything. Super injunctions are dead because people on Twitter don't adhere to them. One of the big problems we have are trying to deal with online abusers who just decided to pick on a famous person and call him a rapist or a paedophile or a child abuser because they know that will get to them, they know that will distress them. And the law does not give very much protection. And indeed, the police tend to be very slow to act unless they perceive or they can be satisfied that there's a direct threat on the individual concerned, which is very, very hard to prove. In the era of the internet...
Do you not think it will damage then the credibility of the justice system, that in trying to suppress this information, that information will still get out there into the public domain because of Twitter, because of social media, and it will just make the legal system look like a closed shop?
No, well, I would disagree entirely with that again. The problem is that at this moment in time, and perhaps I'll bring forward my speech, a part of my speech, I represented, and my clients give me permission to cite this example tonight, I represented the X Factor judge Louis Walsh, and you might think, what's the relevance here with the subject tonight? But Louis was accused a couple of years ago. He was subjected to front page banner headlines in The Sun, and he was accused of a serious sexual offence against a man in a nightclub, in the toilets of a nightclub in Dublin. He was given 5 hours notice that The Sun were going to run the story. He was totally taken aback, knew nothing about any alleged police investigation, knew nothing about any allegations. And in the time allowed to us, when we pleaded with The Sun, there must be CCTV footage, there must be something that you can access that will prove that my client wasn't even there, never mind guilty of an act of this nature. The Sun, of course, wouldn't hear of it. They went ahead and published, and in a matter of 5 or 6 seconds, the headlines went from London to Singapore to Sydney to LA. And the problem is that if it is open season on people, whether they are guilty or not guilty, acquitted, whether they're simply questioned, whether the police decide to do a spectacular raid on their house before they even question them. The difficulty in the age of the internet is that this information is disseminated around the world, and there's no acquittal, no dropping of charges, no apology in a paper that's going to get that reputation back for the individual concerned. And whether it's the accused of a serious sex crime, whether it's somebody who has just literally been unfortunate to have fallen foul of the tabloid press, once that accusation is made, they are wrecked. They are finished. I have seen victims of sex abuse. I've seen victims of child abuse. No, thank you, not at the moment. I have seen them, and at the end of the day, what people don't understand, it is very easy to trivialise the impact on somebody's reputation when something like this is thrown onto you. Whenever you get hit with a media exocet of this nature, people think of suicide. They think their life's over. And again, I would emphasise, I am not for one moment trying to compare reputational damage with the hurt impact and the physical effect on the victim of a sex attack. But nonetheless, there is another consideration that has to be taken into account here. And I would ask people to consider that. Sorry, go ahead.
So partly I introduced my point of intervention in this way, that it's interesting that two of you have named people that you've dealt with when you're proposing that people should be anonymous.
No, well, his name is right across the media, so that's not correct. That's not a fair point to make. That's not a fair point.
But
his name has since been across the media.
The point that I want to make in intervention isn't your argument a question about proper publicity to enable us to accept verdicts and decisions rather than suppressing the information?
No, well, again, the problem is, and again, just to follow another angle on that point, if somebody is subjected to the wait, and we're talking about months here. I mean, Louis Walsh, it took 1.5 years for him to get vindication in that situation. When somebody, I mean, Cliff Richard, I don't even know what the position is in terms of the time scale for his questioning or charging, whatever. I mean, months are passing here when these people are hung out to dry. If there was anonymity, as there is in Ireland, I mean, in Ireland, somebody who is charged with rape is entitled to anonymity under the law. And they are entitled to anonymity right up until conviction. And even on conviction, there is a discretion on whether that anonymity should be preserved. The victim's wishes obviously come into play here, and sometimes, and there are occasions, where a victim of a rape attack decides that she or he does not wish to have the adverse publicity that follows through. And so a victim is given the option as to whether that anonymity is to be passed on. And that has, again, and I'm not a particular expert in this field, but it appears to be working. And it certainly is an alternative to the Salem witch hunt that we have all experienced in the aftermath of the Savile scandal. I mean, if I could just, one scenario that I was just thinking about when I was coming over in the plane today, if we were to throw the names of a number of the accused, a number of the people who have been either questioned, arrested, charged in the aftermath of Savile, names such as Jim Davidson, Jimmy Tarbuck, Freddie Starr, Paul Gambaccini, Nigel Evans, Dave Lee Travis, Bill Roach, Stuart Hall. Of this sample list, we all would have to think for a moment as to who was convicted, who was just charged, who was arrested, who was merely questioned. So far as all the names that I've just given you there, it doesn't really matter. They will be forever associated with a sex crime, regardless of their innocence or guilt. We're now living in fast-moving times with the adage that a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes, more relevant than ever in the age of the internet. In the modern era, those who have come under suspicion have had to accept their reputational fate, which for some is probably just as bad as the ritual drowning of witches as epitomised in Arthur Miller's The Crucible. I would contend that in circumstances where criminal charges are dropped or where there's been an acquittal, this could actually be more of a deterrent to other victims coming forward, whereas a highly publicised conviction would provide reassurance to other victims in this regard. I appreciate that this is a question of balance. with the victim's interests always coming first, but perhaps not always totally at the expense of the reputation of the accused. I was close to a case quite recently where there was an acquittal, and I have to be very careful what I say here, but there were other potential victims in the background who have not come forward as a result of the publicity around the case. And while that is very much the minority, that's very much the lesser of the situations that we have been talking about, it is a fact that has to be taken into account. Accordingly, I would oppose a motion and argue that anonymity should be granted to those arrested and charged with serious sex crimes until they've actually been convicted of a criminal offence. And in doing so, a fundamental protection will be restored, which we in this country have enjoyed for many centuries, and that is we're all supposed to be deemed innocent until proven guilty. Thank you very much.